we have a really exciting day planned today. And so we're gonna start off by foraging. We're gonna gather salad greens, we're gonna gather cooking greens, we'll probably gather a bunch of flowers, and we're gonna be gathering things for tea. So there's gathering in the field, and then there's gathering in the forest. And really, I like to concentrate more on the gathering in the field and the edges, because that's where most of the food is. Like these wild foods that we're gonna be playing with, a lot of them really benefit from human disturbance. And so there's this really interesting dynamic going on between the plants and the people. It's gonna be awesome, but I'm not gonna get into that too much because I thought we could introduce the day. So then we're gonna go
to make the food.
Make the food.
Yeah, so this amazing place, Living Web Farms, they've got multiple sites, and the place where we're gonna end up is kind of like the flagship site that's got their gardens and some greenhouses and also a teaching kitchen. And so whatever we've found, as well as stuff that Natalie and I have collected ahead of time, we will be putting together into a meal at the other site.
Yeah.
Should we introduce ourselves a little bit?
I think we should.
Yeah?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, I'm Natalie Bogwalker, and I have been foraging food since I was about 5. My mom was really into wild foods, and I'm really lucky about it. It was funny, when I was a little kid, I had very little interest in it, except if I could eat it as far as botany went, but some of it sunk in, and I resisted it for a long time, but more recently, in the last 15 years, have gotten really back into wild foods, and it's a very deep part of my life. And I think that if we can all connect with the foods that are all around us, that it creates a really different level of being human and being animal. And so I'm really excited to be here with y'all doing this right now. And I'm actually writing a book right now on wild food preservation. And Marc and I have been hanging out for a good long while with our former teacher, Frank Cook, and it's exciting to get to do this now in our different lives. And I also run the Firefly Gathering and Wild Abundance, which teaches classes on homesteading, eco-homesteading, gardening, primitive skills, the whole gamut. So check it out.
Okay. And so Marc Williams, and just really excited to be here with you, in particular with Natalie. I've been teaching this stuff for quite a bit, but it's always fun to co-teach. I think both for me as a teacher to learn more stuff from somebody else, and also to take a break to catch my breath. And at the same time, I think also for students, a lot of feedback I've gotten is that you get these kind of different perspectives. And today we've got the yin and the yang to some degree, which is awesome as well. And as far as getting to this path, somewhat similar to Natalie, I've loved to cook since I can practically remember. And I have had a series of jobs cooking professionally, even kind of starting out more like in kind of the mainstream conventional sort of sense, but then in the late 90s moving towards natural foods, local foods, farm to table. And in that transition, pretty quickly understanding that there are all of these plants that are available kind of growing in the margins of the places where we're growing plants intentionally, that are easily as palatable and oftentimes more nutritious than the conventional food crops that we're growing. And so I moved to this area in pursuit of that in 1999, and kind of worked in a series of situations, both working in the field with the garden, in restaurants. After doing that for a few years, went on to Warren Wilson College over in Swannanoa, getting my bachelor's degree in sustainable agriculture and a minor in business. Moved on from that to do a food business myself with a couple partners, like catering, food at farmers markets, festivals, you name it sort of situation. And that sort of melted away for a number of reasons. I went on to do landscaping for a while after that, because I kind of learned the plants of farm fields. I'd learned the plants of the forest in my undergraduate education, and so now I wanted to learn the plants that are around the kind of built environment, oftentimes things that we've brought from all over the world. And after doing that for a couple years, it's like, okay, well, I know most of those, on to graduate school. And so then I spent a couple thousand hours, literally, of time researching the plants of Appalachia. And the program I was in was Appalachian Studies with a concentration in sustainable development. So all my research was around the plants of Appalachia and how we can employ them in a sustainable way. And after finishing that program, pretty much just launched full on into a teaching career of around somewhere between 40 and 50 different organizations I worked for over the course of the year. And you can see a lot more about that at the website Botany Every Day that I maintain. And also at that website is an online class by donation. It's going to go pretty fast and furious here. We're going to cover a lot of plants. I'm sure some will stick and some will not. But rest assured that there's ways to kind of continue this learning in numerous different paths. And this Botany Every Day website is one of those ways, where there's this online class by donation in the tradition of Frank Cook that he did for 9 years. I'm now going into my 6th year of doing it. And there's also a Facebook group that is by that same name, Botany Every Day, and that's got over 4,000 people from all over the world that are part of that. So those are a couple resources in that regard. And I guess just to frame out a little bit more of what's brought me to you and also what's given me the information I'm going to be sharing with you, as much as it's been about some kind of working in the field and also a good bit of academic training, a lot of it has been doing things like what we're doing today. It's just going on walks with knowledgeable people. I would say easily as much or more than in my academic training in some ways, as far as especially getting the knowledge to stick. And then a lot of travels through all 50 states of the US and quite a few countries as well. And in particular, going to botanical gardens anywhere I can to learn more plants where they've got their nice little sign on them and tells you what they are. It really simplifies things. As does a big theme. I'd say if there is one take-home message for the learning today, it is to try to frame your knowledge around plants into the families that they represent, right? Because there are this huge selection of species in this area. There's about 2,400 different species in the world, about 300,000. And the next level above that is the genus or general level. And in this area, there's about 700 of those. In the world, about 15,000. So these are really big numbers, can be overwhelming for anybody. But at the family level, that next level above the genus is the family. There's about 500 in the world, only about 200 where it gets cold. And the great news is that from like up to the top of that hill to the top of that hill and all around us, most of the plants are going to fit into 30 families. And actually quite a bit, like 1 in 5 will fit into 7 families. So kind of learning these main families first and the characteristics that are involved with them will really simplify things for you. And the cool thing at the family level, there's so much utility. Oftentimes there will be food families, medicine families, families that are poisonous, lots of other traits as well. Families are good for birds and bees and butterflies. So I would say focus really at the family as far as organizing the information, and that will really simplify your job for you.
That sounds good. And one thing I would mention too is, how many of y'all have eaten wild food before? Okay, so most of you. So we've got a fairly advanced group, it seems like. And if you're not super familiar with so many species that we're going to be going through, something I would encourage everyone to do is learn 5 things today. It's so much better to learn 5 things really well and get it deep in your bones and taste it and remember it and draw it maybe and take a picture of it than to try to lightly learn 25 things. And so I'd really focus on those 5 things. I wanted to mention really quickly too, before we got started, is that May 8th through 10th, also in the tradition of Frank Cook, there's going to be a wild foods hike, a 3-day wild food eating backpacking trip. And so that's on the wildabundance.net website, and I have more information if anyone's interested. So let's move around a little bit.
Well, can we just do these two real quick?
Sure.
Okay, because it's so great to see these two right next to each other. They're often confused. And so we've got them right here. We can just clearly distinguish between them. And I'm sure a lot of you will recognize these already. I kind of really like the Socratic method rather than telling you what I know. It's awesome to hear what you know already and also kind of engages you in this process. So as I said, I'm sure some of you know these two already. So what do we have here? Burdock. And which one's the burdock?
The one in front of you.
This one, okay. And which one is this? Yellow dock, okay. Great, yes, exactly. So here we've got burdock in the aster family, so that would be under Asteraceae on your list. And we've got yellow dock in the Polygonaceae family, or buckwheat family. So that would be under P on your list. Now, how did y'all know that? Did the plant scream it out to you? Or I'm sure there's something that told you what was what, right? And it's nice to kind of figure out what that is, because sometimes people are like, I just know, you know, and that's great too, but it's nice to develop an architecture of understanding that you can describe, especially for like littles, like this one right here, you know, so we can train up the next generation. So what do we got? Yeah, like
less curls.
this one.
Yes.
Elongated, less curls, right? Okay. Yeah, there's a little bit of a red stem right there, although this, if you look up close, there's red there too.
It's a different way though.
Yeah. So I'm just going to
pass this
shortcut,
around.
right, because actually there's probably 15 different things we could say, especially as these things grow up and mature, to distinguish them. But the big one thing, right, and this is kind of something I call the difference that makes a difference, is that you turn it upside down and this has got all these little white hairs. It might be a little bit hard to see the hairs, especially from where you're at, but you can clearly see that's white underneath, right, versus this one is just greenish yellow, okay? Yeah, so that's the big difference. I mean, also that this is more like triangular shaped, but when they're young, that can be a little bit, you know, harder to see. Okay, these leaves will get a lot bigger too, potentially. These leaves are pretty much full size at this point. So I could pass these around too for people to check out. So what do we know about the docks already? Yeah, liver detoxification, that would go across both of these. Maybe one reason why they share the same common name is that you can use the roots to detoxify your liver. This could be a classic kind of spring type of thing as far as that goes. So we'll make a tea of these and some other detoxifiers for that kind of spring cleaning effect. Yeah, anything else? What else do we know about these?
The leaves of yellow dock, I've heard.
Right, so you can eat the leaves of the yellow dock. The leaves of the burdock would be way too bitter. So that would be one reason why you would want to distinguish between the two as far as that goes.
You could eat which ones? I'm sorry.
You can eat the leaves of the yellow dock, although typically you would want them to be about half this size. Like this is a little mature. They would be pretty bitter at this point too. It's like the baby leaves. This is actually a baby. This would, and maybe a little bit bigger would be an example of a good edible size yellow dock.
And that is something that goes throughout different plants. Like you want to eat the part of the plant where the power is. So in the winter time, what part of the plant would you want to eat? The root, exactly. And then what part in the early spring? The leaves. And the timing is going to be a little bit different with all different plants because they emerge at different times. And then would you want to eat the flowers of dandelions, right? Or excuse me. Would you want to eat the leaves of dandelions right now when they are going into flower and seed?
No.
Because are they going to have much energy in them? Are they going to be very tasty? No. So it's a really good thing that spans throughout all these different families that we're going to be looking at.
Totally. And I would say, just speaking to the roots as well as food, this is a pretty good food, I would say, and very classic in Asian cuisine in particular, called gobo there, and use, you know, say in miso soup or pickled, put in sushi or kimchi's or something like that. This is really just like more of a medicinal root. It's not really like a food root. It's kind of stringy, tough, fibrous.
Unless you like to eat yucky things.
Right, right, yeah. So, so that would be some of the distinctions of these two plants that are called dock.